Okay, we're going to look at making a composite sequence in After Effects using stills. And in this tutorial, I'm just going to show you the basics of getting your footage into After Effects and just looking at the work area in After Effects. And then in later tutorials, we'll look at animating those layers and adding effects and exporting. Okay, so what we have here is just a layered document in Photoshop with all the images that I'm going to use in my sequence. So you can see they're just stacked here and resized, ready for use. An important thing to note, I've just labelled each layer. This is quite important when working with After Effects because you'll see in a minute that the thumbnail previews are not very helpful, so it's always good to have a kind of named layer. And this is good practice anyway, because you might find that you're working in a document later on that has lots and lots of layers, so it just helps with working quite quickly. So I've got this Photoshop file and I've got it saved in a folder on my desktop, which is just the project folder, and I'm going to save my After Effects file in here, and inside that projects folder I've got a sources folder, which is where I keep all the bits and pieces for this project. Now After Effects is quite a it's quite a powerful kind of tool, and it can work with lots of different things. So here you'll see I've got some textures which are just TIFFs. I've also got some movies in different formats there. I've got my Photoshop file, I've got some straight JPEGs, and you can even put Illustrator files in there. So it's quite a versatile application. The way we're going to use it is just with, for this tutorial, is just with sort of stills. And it's quite good. After Effects works well with stills, and a lot of the Photoshop effects and filters that you find that you use in Photoshop are actually available in After Effects and work in very much the same way. So you can, in a lot of ways, think of After Effects as Photoshop with a timeline, which is good. So we're going to go ahead and just open After Effects. And the first thing you'll see is this window, obviously. If you've got recent projects open, you can go back to them, but we're just going to make a new composition. And you'll get this option here. If you click at the top here where it says presets, you get a big list of presets. Generally, for production purposes, people are using HDTV 1080, so that's a full HD 25 frames a second, so this 25 here is 25 frames a second. So a lot of the presets from here are really what you'll be looking at. For our purposes, we're just going to use standard web video format, so 320 by 240. We're going to leave the presets here as they are. And one thing to note here, where it says duration, if you wanted 10 seconds, you'd put the 10 in where my cursor is now, as these two numbers here are the frames. So this is 10 seconds and a number of frames. So we never really bother with putting in specific frames as a time code, so we're just going to use 10 seconds, and this will be the background colour. Away you go. So once you've got a project open, you'll see that there's lots of panels. Looks a bit scary, but it's very similar to Premiere, so if you've used that, it's not a problem. Basically, all your imported footage will sit in this panel here, your project's bin. This area here is your timeline, which you'll have layered elements on. This is your viewer or canvas, and then you'll have some palettes down here which you'll use to work with, a bit like you would in Photoshop. Just up here, the workspace we've chosen is animation, and there are lots of different ones in here, so depending on what you're working on. Animation is a good all-rounder. Allows you to sort of move content around with keyframes, and all the panels that are available are to do with that. So if you want to, you can just move these up, and we're going to work with mainly the effects and presets panel. Okay, so away we go. We can import our Photoshop file, so import file, go to sources, PSD. It'll ask you what kind of footage. All acceptable footage is fine. and then where it says import as, if we're importing a movie, we import footage, but if we're importing a Photoshop file with layers, we want to import it as a composition. And then importantly too, we want to retain the layer size, so any transform controls for that layer need to be the right size and fit the layer properly. So composition, retain layer size is what you need. Editable layers styles, yes. Click OK. In it comes, and you'll see in here you've got a folder that says Mini Project 2, which is the title of the PSD, and then all my layers are in a folder. And it'll also make a timeline for me, and if I double click that, it'll populate that timeline with the layers exactly as they were in the PSD. So here you can see what I'm talking about with the thumbnails. They don't really do much, so it's really good to have each layer labelled when you're working with After Effects. And this all works the same way as Photoshop, so you can turn the layers off just by clicking these little eyes on the side here, and we can just resize the viewer so that you can see everything. So once you've imported that, you can then just save as, and you can save your project just into your main folder. I'm just going to call it test. Ready for the second bit, which will be the animating and the effects.